Welcome to the Take Detroit Show. I am your host, Brandon Colvin, and today we have a very interesting and special guest. Her name is Karen Prater Jasmine. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be back in Detroit.
Wonderful. Well, I guess that's a good place to start.
Yes.
Back in Detroit. So you are a Detroit native.
Detroit native.
And where did you go?
How many places did I go? Detroit native, left to go to the Army at 17, live internationally, and then returned to Detroit for a little while, and now I'm in Atlanta.
And now you're in Atlanta. But you're in Detroit today, and what we're here to talk about
Yes.
is your company Domicile.
Yes.
What is Domicile?
Well, domicile is from the Latin word for home.
Okay.
And so the company is Domicile Detroit because our mission is to build houses for Detroiters so that it's not just where they lay their head, but it's their home. And so that's what domicile really means.
So you're building homes for Detroiters. What makes you different
Yes.
than any other developer, any other home builder in the city? What's the domicile difference?
Yeah, so the domicile difference is layered because it assumes a very local solution, and that is to say that we manufacture prefabricated housing, residential only single or duplex, employing Detroiters, and we're only building in the city of Detroit. And so that just knocks out those four things, 90% of the people who are in the built space right now. They're not building, manufacturing, or employing Detroiters to build for Detroiters.
So your approach is almost wholly focused on addressing issues of housing in the city. But what is your why?
Well, the why, he was pointing at something. Well,
You got distracted.
the why is this. You know, housing is a human right. And it was outlined in the UN maybe in 1963, really saying that housing needed to be affordable and culturally appropriate. And where we get stuck on is the affordable part. So there's an affordable formula that the government creates, but it does not mean that people working minimum wage jobs, even at $20 an hour, are not giving away more than 50% of their income to put a roof over their heads. And we know what happens to the rest of it. You still gotta do transit, still gotta eat, still gotta entertain. And so the why is making it affordable for real. And being local allows us, to be able to ask, what are the real issues that impact your housing? Because housing solutions made in California don't talk to us. But when we're asking people, how did you get to this point? Do you want to be a homeowner? How long have you been trying? How much are you paying now? And let the solution be based on the impact we get from our future customers.
So you mentioned the UN and
Yes.
affordability being one of the factors that
Yes.
they use to determine when thinking about housing and housing access. But you also mentioned culture. Can you speak a little bit about how culture impacts your work and the built
Yes.
environment in general?
Well, certainly. I think the UN, because they're an international organization, has to say culturally appropriate. Because what works for someone in Spain, in Ecuador, and on the continent of Africa looks very different. We will call something overcrowded, right?
About California.
Exactly. And you bring it all the way back to the US, culturally appropriate housing looks different all around the country. And because it's such a local need, you can't have a house and you live in Detroit and it's in California. It's a very specific need, same way food. You have to eat here every night if that's where you live. Well, it looks different because even Detroit has an enclave of folks from Bangladesh and folks from, that are of Latin descent,
Sure.
folks from Africa. And so what housing looks like needs to reflect those people. For far too long, housing has had one look. It's a shotgun house, it's a colonial house, and it does not assume that we ever age. It doesn't assume that we let our cousins live with us. It doesn't assume that our aging parent doesn't want to be in a nursing facility.
Sure.
And so this cultural specificity is something that we build a solution based on, and not just saying, how might I break into what D.R. Horton is doing and do it for cheaper. We can talk about cost, but it really has to be informed by the person we're building it for.
But first, can we just cut? Are we live? Oh shit! Sorry, everybody live, and I say excuse my language. But definitely wanted to circle back and ensure that everybody knows that we are the Take Detroit show. We are committed to bringing on interesting guests from in and around Detroit who are doing interesting things, and which brings us back to our wonderful guest today, Karen Prater Jasmine.
We got to shout out the show. Yes. And so housing is this very, it's a very layered issue. And there's so many people who are seeking housing at all times. And so we need to have concurrent solutions. So there needs to be people who really make sure the renters market is affordable. We need to make sure that Section 8 is accessible and the wait lists are not long. And we also need to make sure that more and more people are homeowners. Because many people will ask, you know, maybe people don't even want to own homes. They're young, you know, they've just graduated college. But the person who's asking that is a homeowner. And we know in this country that a huge part of familial wealth is because people have owned homes. And persons of color and folks in the Detroit metro area have been precluded from home ownership. And so it matters that we have multiple solutions, but home ownership has to be one of them.
So let's talk a little bit about the history of Detroit as it relates to housing.
Yes.
Detroit has a very specific historical arc.
Yes.
In terms of housing and in terms of its population. And Karen, this is my understanding, you used to work for the city at one point.
I worked for the city of Detroit during the Duggan administration. And as Detroit was emerging from bankruptcy, you know, our task was to ensure that every department in the city was postured to deliver services, high quality services, low cost, and to increase the tax base. As it relates to housing, we're always asking ourselves, how do we contribute via policy to ensure that housing is going in the right direction? And you mentioned this historical context. I mean, there's always in every city a freeway coming through and clearing out neighborhoods. So it is really our job in policy to do some restorative work there, right? Not just to talk about what happens here and now, but to think back about what policy got wrong and to right it. So now the solution has to be more weighty because it thinks back to correct things that happened 40 years ago that we still feel the impact of.
Absolutely.
And so policy is a huge part of this, and Detroit has a lot of work to do. There's always this conversation about there's a buildup in the central business district, but not in the neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
And this mayor is doing a fabulous job of making sure that it's a balanced approach to development. And we need to make sure that approach is informed by the people that you're actually going to serve.
Right. That we're actually having those conversations. Like you said earlier in our conversation, it's important that you talk to Detroiters.
That's right.
To best understand what it is that they're going through, the challenges they're facing.
That's
Which
right.
brings me to something a little bit more personal involving your background. You come from a really large family here in Detroit.
It's not that large.
There were, you have 13 siblings.
That mom.
Okay. All right, we had a brief intermission, but we are back here with our esteemed guest, Karen Prater Jasmine. And during our brief intermission, we were having an interesting conversation. We talked before the intermission about the history of Detroit. But now, there are a lot of new things going on in Detroit. There have been some new initiatives rolled out, and there have been some criticisms about existing and new initiatives, particularly as it relates to blight and as it relates to the city's handling of its real estate, of the properties on its real estate rolls, and even the taxation of Detroit homeowners.
Very much so.
How do you respond to that as a home builder, as a Detroiter or a person who grew up in Detroit, and as a person who is looking to redevelop and reimagine what it means to be a homeowner and what it means to build in Detroit?
It's a very good question, because we should not start any endeavor assuming that we have a level playing field that policy's on our side, that the environment in which that we enter this business proposition is going to be a clear one. We should assume the worst. And people are not always happy with what happens at City Hall. We can assume positive intent, but to the degree that we can engage people more and benchmark what's going on around us, then City Hall can really produce initiatives that really work for us, not against us. Case in point, when you're going through permitting, there's this notion that there needs to be architectural integrity. You know what that means? All houses need to look alike. But with so many parcels vacant in Detroit, there needs to be scattered site development. I need to be putting houses on those empty spots on the block. But if policy's not working with me to do that, it stands to reason that the city is working against me. And so again, it's not that they're trying to sabotage us small business owners, but what we really can do is say, hey, we need to have dialogue in a healthy way that's scheduled so that we can really inform each other about the same objective that we have so that we can move forward on it. But just harboring things about, their Detroit versus our Detroit and the city doesn't like what we're doing. No, we should talk and in a meaningful way and make sure we never miss votes. That's what we should do.
That is definitely a key component,
yes.
Because voting is...
that's our voice.
Well, not only is it our voice, but it's underutilized.
That's right.
As a means of voicing concerns.
That's
as
right.
a means of expressing oneself. So let's talk civic engagement, Karen.
Sure.
You've mentioned policy. I know that you also have a history as a political consultant.
Yes.
And you've done some other executive level things. We'll get to those a little bit later, but let's talk briefly about policy in housing, which sort of dovetails with what you just spoke on. Yes. And what's happening in the city. What needs to happen beyond what you just mentioned, mm-hmm. Maybe having more of a scattershot approach? Mm-hmm. What else needs to happen policy-wise to bring Detroit to the place
where it should be, mm-hmm.
where you see it,
yes.
It needs to be? So
I think what needs to happen is we need to really engage technology and innovation. Mm-hmm. For number one, we cannot build houses the way we built them 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. Think about dentistry and braces, how that we stayed on metal braces for hundreds of years. And all of a sudden we have, resin liners and they're moving the teeth faster. Mm-hmm. And so think
Rubber
of
bands.
us still, right. And think of us still building houses with 2x4, that's called stick built. And prefab has been available for 70 years. And then when we have bottlenecks in that supply chain, everything comes to a halt and prices go up.
Sure.
So how do you get it right? We need to invest in the companies like Domicile that is committed to only building those panels here, building with hemp, building with concrete, building with these innovations that are really not even novel anymore. They're old. But if the larger markets, established markets, are not assisting us, then policy has to. I mean tax abatements, make the business environment good for me to bring innovation to housing, because that's how that price point goes down. When I have partnership with banking and insurance, and of course, City Hall has to help with that.
So it's a group effort.
Sure.
So this is something bad happened to somebody, and this is why we need to pay attention to this type of stuff.
Very.
Oh no.
Tuck and roll.
Nice
lost
recovery.
The whole leg.
Huh?
Lost a whole leg. Yes.
So, Karen, when we think about the importance of policy, not only policy itself, but also partnership to help shape policy, what are some examples? Like,
Sure.
Can you bring that to us in the real world?
Yes. So there is a housing project, and it's not a housing project like we think of housing projects. There's a housing initiative that's happening in Boston now. Harvard is one of the partners, obviously. MIT is also. And they're really looking at how might we redevelop a section of the city, and little by little take away the old structures of public housing, and do them with these prefab units. Mm-hmm. And so number one, if energy efficiency is better, the cost of owning that house is lower, When people have more affordable housing, we see their grades go up, their health outcomes. And so why does it matter? It matters because if I spend most of my life in that house, and that's where I nurture my family, if it's a sound place and I have the dignity of ownership, then these other outcomes matter. Where Harvard has been watching that development over the course of a decade, and side by side to other housing projects, they're having better outcomes. Not just in the house itself, not just in the fact that it's energy efficient, but how the children are doing better in school. Because you feel better when you lay your head down somewhere, and your children do, somewhere that's beautiful, right? So don't deprive us of that.
About.
That's right. And so that's just one example of how living somewhere that is dignified and beautiful and affordable impacts all that we are and do. Again, it's the center of the whole family.
So, Karen, you mentioned earlier the importance of technology and innovation. What specifically is Domicile doing that is innovative or that integrates technology in some meaningful way? What are y'all up to on that front?
That's why I'm home. Why I'm home now is working on this beta project to build on the north end of Detroit, the very first home that is prefab by a single, for a single family home by a African American woman, that's me. And so what makes us different and what we're doing now is trying to do the almost impossible thing. And that's bring that price point down. Because everyone is in agreement that we should have affordable wages paid.
Sure.
Detroit's a union town for all builders. And so how might we deliver that product to you at a price point of $175,000?
$175,000.
$175,000. And the next nearest thing on the market is $235,000. So we're aiming to do that by bringing the product to market speedy, using those insulated panels. So then the structure of the house goes up in about 48 hours. So
wow.
So you drive past, because it's crane, it's like a little puzzle. It comes together, it becomes airtight, and then you resume regular construction. But the biggest difference is that speed, and that's where the money is saved.
48 hours?
48 hours, you have 4 sides and a roofing system in place. You drive past, and it has a front door on it.
Wow.
And that's going to be all the difference. And so we think about, what are we doing different? We're seeking to retool the people that are coming to Detroit. It's a little known fact, but Detroit will receive more people coming from incarceration than anybody in the Midwest.
Really?
Yes.
So, in essence, you're saying that Detroit has an influx, or is
we will have an influx. And there are people that are ripe for retooling. There are people now who are leaving service industry that want something different to do. And you'll be taught to manufacture. And so we're seeking partnership with DOL. Labor, you have to support this because you're asking us, help people be employed. Well, we're doing it in a way that suggests that you don't have to do something adjacent. You can do something altogether new. You'll be taught to manufacture and taught to build.
How do you know the percentage of people who are in affordable housing in the city of Detroit? Do you have an idea of?
So the affordable housing is a real financial concrete term. And so you'll have many builders who will do 20% of their project affordable.
Sure.
And 80% is at market rate. But I'm hacking that system because I'm asking, if the project at market rate is $235,000, the affordable may hover around $200,000. That's still out of the reach of most Detroiters. And so what are we relegated to? We're doing renovation and we're doing a bang-up job at it. But at some point, people deserve new. Like, I don't want to have to go to the suburbs to get my first taste of a 30-year-old house. I want new in my own city.
So, Karen, how did you even come up with the idea for Domicile? Obviously, there's a need, but we see needs every day.
Yes.
What is it that is driving you to do this work, to build these properties?
Well, first of all, it's in my blood. I come from a family of commercial construction.
Okay.
My brother's in LA now, Dr. Sam Prater, and he is granted by the state of California $26 million to provide housing to underhoused community college students. in 3 different locations
in California.
in California.
Yeah,
And so,
that's
you know, this is in our blood.
astronomical to-
Right.
to rent.
And
buy.
so, but the need is there. I mean, you know, I've always had a home, but they've been sometimes not so great. You know, I've lived in places that I'm not proud of, that I felt like my children deserve better. And so the need is so close to us. And then I was a social worker for 10 years. My first 10 years out of college, I was a social worker in these streets. And
Here in Detroit.
In Detroit. And it's not pretty how we live, what poverty does to us, what it robs us of. And so I'm thinking, okay, we got to solve this. You know, and I trust that. I believe in the community of all causes. Someone will take care of the environment, someone will take care of food quality, someone will take care of labor, and someone has to take care of that most important thing, and that's where we lay our head. And so I love the issue because, you know, it's a family thing.
So, let's lighten it up a bit.
Sure.
Karen, if you were an animal, what would you be?
A butterfly.
A butterfly. Look at what's on the screen right there.
Oh, that's crazy.
That's actually what made me ask the question. 'Cause there's a
Okay.
butterfly on the screen.
So let me tell you why. So you start out as this not very attractive creature, and then you go into this little chrysalis. Do you know that little moth turns into liquid and then and then re-emerges as a whole new thing?
It turns into liquid first?
It
never
just
knew that.
it literally melts down. But the beauty of it is this: something new comes forth that from just gloop. And so butterflies to me are renewed life, having a more beautiful future than your past. So that's the animal that I would be.
Animal that you would be. That's actually a really good answer. And I learned something that
Right.
I never knew.
I will send you a link.
And I guess your answer also makes sense on a different level because this animal actually builds a house for itself.
For itself.
To live in, you know, for a period, and after which it emerges brand new. A house that quite obviously, I guess, nourishes it.
That's right.
And,
But does it not have the same characteristics of what our homes should do for us?
Absolutely.
There's a place in the world, in Germany, in Augsburg, Germany, which is in the southern part of the country. And about 500 years ago, a family called the Fuggers, they're bankers. They built a housing project for about 500 families, and they charge 1 mark a month.
Really?
Like $1 a month. And to this day, that settlement is still there, maintained by the same family, and they pay $1 a year.
Wow.
So I lived in Germany in the late 80s, and I walked into this space. And
what was it like?
It was like
Describe it to us. You got to give us the real rundown now.
They're very, you know,
$1 a
$1 a year for the whole year. So you'll go online and you read about Der Fuggerei, and we'll put a caption for you all. And they're like 1-story brick settlements, and they have, you know, what you need: bathroom, kitchen, some common area. But this banker said, you know, part of how I got my wealth is serving the community, and I need to serve them in a different way. And his family, this many generations later, I think 11 generations, still maintains that. I think it was no coincidence that I walked into that space as a 17-year-old person in the Army and saw for the first time someone intentionally making things right. The more people that we can include in society, the more times, you know, I don't want to take food stamps. I want the right and opportunity to be able to earn for my own self. And so the society is richer. So I envisioned that he was thinking that, let me take care of this need so that they could be more productive. And I want to do that. And I'm so glad I had that experience.
That's actually amazing. I've never heard of you dropping all kinds of new information today, Karen. So as we get ready to wrap up, there's something pretty distinctive and special about the properties that you're building.
Yes.
And it's the roof. In addition, well, there are other things special about it. It's not the only special thing about it. But domicile properties can be identified
By this monoslope roof.
by, what's it called?
Monoslope.
A monoslope roof.
So here's one slope, here's 2 slopes, like a traditional homes, and we have always a monoslope roof. And it just pays ode to ever rising. we're ever rising.
And so it's like
No cap, we're ever rising.
Is it always in the same direction?
No, depends. So the house will always be situated for the lot,
Uh-huh.
but it will always have a monoslope roof.
Always a monoslope roof. Will it always be the same color?
You know, Henry Ford had a little thing called, you can have any car, any color, as long as it's black. And so in terms of efficiencies, in order for me to crank out houses quickly and keep that price low, I have to produce the same thing over and over and over. Now, we'll get creative around how the facade looks, but at the end of the day, you're getting that low price point because I was able to bring the price down by making the same thing over and over and over. So you'll change the landscaping and you'll change maybe a little bit about the floor plan, but to drive past them, you'll know that's a domicile house. And you'll be happy that you're a part of what we're doing in Detroit together.
So I think that is a great point to really wrap this up, Karen. How can people find Domicile and how can they engage with you and learn more about what it is you're doing? And if they'd like to get an affordable, beautiful, monoslope roofed home.
Yes. Well, I'm at www.domicile.com. All the information that you need is on that website. Our about, our legislative endeavors, because policy is a huge part of what we're doing. And, you know, call my cell phone. I would love to chat it up. Because the best thing about this is ever learning through collaboration and ever listening to the client to say, here's what you need to solve for me in this house. So visit me on the website. We'll be in touch.
And are you active on social media?
Well, I'm a little older, but yes, I'm kind of active on social media. Domicile is that Twitter, is that Facebook, is that Instagram, but yeah.
Is it just at Domicile Detroit?
Yes,
or,
Domicile Detroit, all the way across.
All the way across.
Yes.
Karen, thank you so much for joining us today on the Take Detroit show.
Pleasure's been mine.
Really enjoyed having you and the wonderful knowledge you dropped on us. We didn't know, we knew that you were a builder, but not also a biologist and a German historian. So
it's all for the houses, it's all for the cause.
This goes to show you never know what you're gonna get when you join us here at Take Detroit. Oh, and we also have a wonderful sponsor, lest I forget, Elements Water Brand. They are a brand new startup in the city of Detroit with alkaline CBD water. So it is non-psychoactive, won't get you high, but it will quench your thirst, it will keep you hydrated, and it has all of the wonderful qualities of alkaline water. It is 8.5% pH. So we really want to send a great shout out to our sponsor, Elements CBD Water. You can find them at Elements CBD Water on Twitter, Instagram, across all the social channels. Once again, I am Brandon Colvin. This is the Take Detroit show, and this is our wonderful guest, Karen Prater Jasmine. And good night.
It was a pleasure.